Hello. It is I, Cody, returning with another poetry reading, this time from the book For an Ineffable Metrics of the Desert by Mostafa Nissabouri, translated from the French, a Moroccan writer, but from the French by Guy Bennett, Pierre Jory, Addie Leek, and Teresa Villa Ignacio. This poem is titled On the Margin. Before the silhouette soaks up what will give it contour and thickness, saturate it with writing of static time. Fortify it on the scale of its tomb at this instant we want for past days, or what remains of past days after the vague perception of their flight, between oceanic tumult and dilated shadows to the place where the horizon ripped itself open. We want to see that whole share of absence led back to the confines of a clouded heart and tuned to match esoteric decans. Then, when everything is done, may the sky, in an aerial reprise, cloak itself again in its newly remembered crimson and position itself at the day and time when it was permitted from a flight of starlings suspended long on the breeze to sense the invisible laws making up the immediacy of the self dissipate, that day that required a hasty return with the sudden budding of a frantic distich, now forever vanished, poignant in origin and anticipating the boundless. We want to leave everything behind, to trust to the precise number of fading cards in the shadow projected by a wisp of straw in the corner of the mouth, and to fall in step with its words in retreat. To renounce after so many miracles these voices with their uncorrupted harmonies, these atlas pastorals that bareheaded women mixed with the scents of the prairies and offered as aromatic drink for the metempsychotic poem to be recited in humanity's last days. And again begin to make ourselves unrecognizable foreign in the parts of existence that follow you in the dust of asphyxiated suburbs, pass by you in wandering bushes, and will be lost in the pale analogy of the sun. To leave all these other quiet paths that teach some to walk barefoot, dressed in crude wool, and others prepared for the looming decline of the stars, to turn away from the world and go who knows where, and to others for whom wisdom and madness have been equal shares of the same desire to live, tucked away in a dark, dreadful cavern, to put the final touches on their divorces, and to others still prey to secret doubts, to invoke the conjecture of an angel up there among the dissipating gleams who could at any moment reach impossibility, and those during this time calling themselves submerged in its all-presence and staying in the shadow of moving branches, captives of a daydream that doesn't want to end. Reunite along the way with these words, shivered as though inherited from solitary perambulations, breathing that blissful unconsciousness that clothes itself in clean like a protective veil, that puts lips in place for the bending inherent in the uttered commitment to wandering, that walks at the edge of the dark clay, continuing till out of sight in the wormwood, whitening the steps, that gets lost in the wild marjoram's tender green, conducted across the wind-beaten plains to the first escarpments of limestone rock, then to the worn houses and old gray peat, as though stationary amid thousands of tombs, and from which one returns submerged in the infinite, not without sometimes having had to bite back the brusque rise of an irrational tear. But near disappeared sites where it doesn't take much for the landscape itself to dim forever, where everything that remains harks back to the tension of spaces profiled behind the head, relegates to the mute narrative's introverted brink, to the lands destined to brushers against nothingness. Once there, all other itineraries on hold, one must again bless that sight that revives from the other side, in the book of the unperceived, the feeling of having again been inseparable from the same invisible speaker, the same one on the paths invaded by stubborn thistles, along the undergrowth friend of ruins, who knows how to name a dreamed emotion, who remembers the other life where portions of the soul we believed extinguished still strive. I love this work. I love Nissabouri's work for many reasons. And you'll probably hear this come up recently. I've just been in a very meditative mood. But there's something about reading a writer who's unabashed about, putting a poem down that's 3, 7, 15 pages long, that makes me a bit more willing to indulge in the world that their language is carving out. I think Nissabouri writes in a very dramatic fashion. He uses the word metempsychosis or metempsychotic writings quite often. I guess not often, but a few times throughout this collection. And I thought it was a kind of beautifully dramatic word and phrase to kind of weave into the otherwise diction of talking about mountainous landscapes, pastorals, sand, all of the things that captivate the mind and their infinite unknowability. Infinity is such a troubled word for poetics, I think. Poets always want to talk to the infinity, and in my experience, readers always want an answer from it. Neither of which is particularly actionable, achievable. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this poem. If you liked it, then please check out Mostafa Nissabouri's work. He's had an incredible career. Thank you so much. Take care.